Well, I'm joined here today by Natalie Morwood, CFO of Luxury Escapes. Natalie, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks for having me.
Natalie, before we get into your CFO career, can you tell us a little bit about your early days and what drew you towards finance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I decided to do commerce at uni, like most accountants do. It was always something that I liked and had a passion for. And honestly, I just always liked accounting, which sounds odd, but I did. I liked something that had a clear path. You knew where it was going. So did that at uni and then did vacation work at Ernst & Young in audit. I didn't even really know what audit was, but I was told it was the best chance to get in anywhere was to pick audit because it's the most grads get accepted there. So did vacation work there, then got a graduate position and got my CA while in a chartered firm, like many others in accounting. And I think, you either start at the chartered firms and figure out early on you either want to stay to become partner or it's not really in your future and you want to see what else is out there. So that's kind of where I got to. Once I got my CA, I decided that the external industry world was calling for me. So looked elsewhere, and that's how I ended up at Census.
And do you think back now, and was there a pivotal moment during your EY days that really stands out as like, okay, I'm ready to make this move, or was it more of a natural progression over time?
I think it was more natural. I think I always wanted to be the client, not to service the client. I really liked being on the other side of the table. As much as, working in a chartered firm as a young accountant is amazing. You start with a graduate group, you become really close with them, you do your CA together. You have a huge amount of support, obviously, with a global company like Ernst & Young, and you make amazing contacts. I really liked seeing what my clients were doing on the other side of the table and always had a taste for that. Even, you get told, don't go into industry, you'll just end up doing month end and journals. I was actually super excited to get exposed to that stuff. So I was very happy to move across.
Now, your first move out came with Census in 2014. And I just want to go through this journey for our audience. But 2014, your first move out of the Big Four, into, I believe it would have been a financial accounting role. By 2018, you were acting CFO of that organisation, soon confirmed in the role as permanent in 2020. Talk us through that transition and that rapid rise within what is a huge organisation.
Yeah, look, it was a very interesting time to move across. So I moved in 2014, like you said, as probably the most junior person in the finance team. So quite a junior financial accountant doing, like what I said, journals, month end, very basic stuff. And then it was at a time when, so they sold from Telstra in February of that year and I joined in June. So very, very close after a sale where they were going through a massive transformation coming out of a huge conglomerate like Telstra on their own standalone basis owned by private equity. So they had to pretty much start from scratch in terms of finance processes, finance systems. We had to completely migrate off Telstra systems. We didn't even have access to our own bank accounts under Telstra. So, and then all of a sudden you're owned by private equity and you have to prepare your own 13-week cash flow forecasts and know every single dollar coming in and out of the business. So huge transformation, especially for the finance team. And I think to my advantage, I was given a lot of opportunities. So there were lots of new things that not many people in the company had ever been exposed to, not even just a financial accountant. Even our most senior people in the finance team had not really had exposure to. So that gave me a huge amount of opportunity. So I started to get involved in more technical aspects of being under private equity ownership, like shareholder loans and distributions. And that really gave me exposure to our ownership group, the private equity team, as well as the CFO at the time. And I just started saying yes to a lot of opportunities. So I remember my very first kind of venture out of your standard financial accounting, which, I did your stat accounts and your journals and all that. And then I was asked to take over accounts payable. So completely outside of the realm of financial accounting and more in the shared services space. And I was very nervous. I didn't think I could do it. And, the advice given to me at the time is just say yes to opportunities. And I was in the right stage of my career to take those risks and to see if I could make it work. So I think that was kind of the stepping stone. So I took over accounts payable, then I took over more parts of shared services. Then all of a sudden, all of finance ops was underneath me. And then, it got to the point where I got pulled into the CEO's office one day and said, we're going to make you acting CFO. And that was kind of 4 years after I started. So it was drastic, but also exciting at the same time.
And walking through that time, often, there's champions, there's advocates for you within the business that really help you on that pathway. Are there any individuals that stand out as important to you in that journey?
Yeah, 100%. So my CFO at the time, who actually was, when I first joined, she was kind of 2-3 levels above me. And then slowly, as I progressed more and more in the company, we started working together very closely. I say she raised me in the finance world. She taught me everything I knew. She mentored me through a lot of this change. Still hands down the best CFO I've ever worked for. And she really guided me through it. And I think to say yes to a lot of these opportunities and to put yourself in situations that you don't feel automatically comfortable in, you need support and you need the backing of someone that you really trust. And it was still scary. I'm not going to say she took away all the fear, but just knowing you have someone in your corner. And it's also something I've tried to take on with mentoring people in my own team and bringing them up and putting them in situations that I feel like they're ready for, but they might not themselves. Knowing that they have my support and my backing can make a huge difference. And I think, she also taught me that if you can do the job perfectly on day one, it's probably not the job for you. Like, you need a challenge, you need that hunger, and you need to keep going after the things and keep learning. And yeah, she journeyed me through that.
Yeah. And is there anything like that? That's often, there are a lot of stats around this that women as opposed to men will look at the things on the PD that they can't do and convince themselves not to apply for a role, whereas men will look at the opposite as to why they can do the role, to their detriment in many situations. Is there a mindset that you need to be in to be constantly saying yes to roles that are outside your comfort zone? Are there any practices that help you get into that space?
It's a good question. It's very hard. Like, imposter syndrome is real, and it's real for women, especially in an industry like finance. And I still go through it and I still struggle with it. And I'm still put in situations all the time that, that self-doubt kind of comes into your head. And it's hard and it's a risk. But like I said, having a support system, I think getting rungs on the board make a big difference as well, building that confidence internally. And I'm someone that I need to know a company pretty well before I'm willing to put myself out there, which takes time, especially as you move, in different roles and in different, especially industries, which I've just done. But it's risky and it's scary. And you've also got to know that failing is okay. And having the confidence to fail fast and to move on and to learn from it. And you're never going to, you're not always going to have 100% strike rate. It's just not going to work like that. So I think knowing that failure is an option, which is very difficult to accept, but knowing you have the support of mentors, leadership, even the team, that you mentor as well, that they will support you through that is incredibly important.
So as a CFO, talk us through your approach to building credibility with investors, boards, executives.
I think, look, it sounds obvious, but the number one thing is you've got to know your numbers and your metrics and the company that you work for. It's incredibly important. You have to be seen as a trusted advisor to the rest of the business and to external people, which obviously when you move industries and move companies, it takes time. But that's where you've got to also have the confidence to go deep. So when you start somewhere new, just because you might be at a higher level or there might be people actually below you, doing the specific debits and credits does not mean you don't need to get your hands dirty. To me, that's the only way you learn. And it's the only way that I can stand in front of someone and present a presentation or present a number, a graph or whatever, and make sure that I know the numbers and can explain it, is I have to get under the hood and I have to know it. If I'm taking someone else's work and presenting it, I'll never do a good job. You have to know it yourself.
What was the biggest challenge, the biggest gap you needed to cross, moving into that C-level?
I think it's knowing when to lean in and when to lean out. And I think I'm still someone that's very much driven by knowing my numbers back to front and knowing the data and letting the data drive me. And I think it's understanding the balance between like I said, when to get your hands dirty and really when to dig in, but also when to take the step back and look at the more holistic view and provide the more strategic advice, and to partner with people in a way that isn't necessarily just about the numbers. I think when you're very close to the detail, it's easy to get lost in the detail sometimes. But what the rest of the company is looking for when you're at this level is more of the partnership and the strategic eyes rather than just explaining numbers. So it's coming at it with insights and providing help and providing guidance rather than just, hey, here's a set of numbers that I'm presenting.
Mm. And does that approach change at all depending on the ownership structure? Like, how is it compared to where you are now? How is private equity and working with those owners?
It's interesting because I think with private equity, well, look, the other thing is it was all I knew, right? So private equity was the first set of owners that I'd worked with once I moved out of a chartered firm. So it was pretty much the environment. It was all I knew. It's how I grew up in the finance world. Definitely detail orientated is incredibly important. You have to know your numbers back to front. Our budgeting process, our forecasting process, like I said before, our cash flow process was incredibly detailed. We got grilled top to bottom on every single number we presented. Not saying that's not the case in other companies and in more founder-led companies, but I think it's very transactional when you work under private equity. You know, they're there to do something. We all know what they're there to do, and you've got to help them deliver that at a transactional level. I think when you work under, like I am now, which is more founder-led, while you need to obviously know your numbers and understand the data, you can also apply a little bit more of a strategic look at it and help the owner deliver what he wants to deliver in terms of the growth and the success of the company as a whole and the brand and the impact it's having on its customers rather than just purely transactional.
Fascinating. So after Census, you moved to Boston Consulting Group as ANZ Finance Director, CFO of Australia, New Zealand. How different was that environment from your PE experience?
Incredibly different, and incredibly different to where I am now. That was kind of, it stood out like a sore thumb when you look at my career. Going back to consulting, but in the internal aspects of consulting is very, very different. Obviously working in a partnership group, I can't explain how different it is compared to a normal CEO and ELT level dynamic. You've got, when I was there, it was about 50 partners in terms of how they structured their board meetings. You can imagine is 50 different people wanting different aspects and information and looking at things in a different way and making different decisions. You've also got long-standing people that had been there that only knew that world. You can imagine people that have been in consulting their whole lives. That's all they know. So it's just interesting navigating around that, coming from a very traditional kind of P&L balance sheet to very, very different metrics. It's all revenue generating. It's all profitability for the partnership group. It was quite a transition, and they'll be the first ones that will tell you that it takes, at least 2 years to get up to speed in an industry like that.
Yeah, totally. And the different layers there. I mean, again, you're kind of working in an environment that has regions and layer upon layer. Was that hard to navigate?
It was actually an amazing transition because of the level of support that you have. So yes, going to a global company was very, very different. There's a lack of autonomy, I would say, in a global company than you would get in more of the company I'm in now and where I was at Census. However, you have a huge backing behind you. You have a huge global network of tax advisors and legal teams and compliance teams and support from a whole world of people that are there to help you do the best that you possibly can do. And that's really fortunate. It's a really fantastic position to be in. The flip side is you probably don't have as much of your own levers that you can pull in your own decision making to implement in your day-to-day, in the way you run your day-to-day world.
That's fascinating. Yeah, you make a good point around having all these internal resources available to you. What was the relationship like there to these consultants that are, servicing clients? Were you able to, drag in that expertise when needed for the back office?
I think so. There's a good culture at BCG in terms of getting help when you need it, for sure. Obviously clients come first and the client work always comes first. But a lot of them, especially in the finance world, a lot of the consultants, we would have bespoke projects now and then that we would get the consultants to kind of come to the dark side and help us on our internal stuff. And they were super keen because for them, it's like lifting up the hood and seeing what's inside and understanding the mechanics of how we do things and how we capture everything and budgeting and, all that fun stuff. And I think they really enjoyed it. But I think there's a happy medium between giving them the exposure they need on the client work and then helping us on the internal stuff.
Okay, so we're now at Luxury Escapes. You are the CFO of a founder-led business. Talk to me about Luxury Escapes, what they do, and the journey they're on at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting business to be a part of. So I've kind of joined in what would be considered their scale-up phase, but still very much a startup mentality. So obviously, like you said, founder-led, going through massive growth at the moment and trying to navigate through that. And I think for a company like this, there's certain ways that they've got to look at the growth, and there's pros and cons to it. There's making sure that everything you're doing is setting yourself up for success in the future, but also making sure that you stick to what you know, and the customers are the forefront of everything we do, and making sure that we're bringing the best technology and the best luxurious holidays to our customer base as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can for the best prices. And so that is the number one priority. But in the back of our minds, it's also, how do we upskill teams in the right way? We're going through such dramatic growth. We've got to make sure that the capabilities internally are up to speed and the processes and the systems are up to speed. So I think it's a good balance, but it's a really interesting time to be a part of a company like this.
Yeah, and very different to maybe your prior employers, where it's a brand that it's a great barbecue career, if you will. You can really talk to people about where you work and be proud of it. How's it working for something that many of your friends and relatives would be using on a daily basis?
It's great. I love it. I have to say, as much as I commend my time at Census and had the best career there and was given an amazing growth, at the end of the day, their core product is yellow pages and white pages, whereas now I get to talk about luxurious holidays and really fun stuff. So, loving the product that you sell and that you work with every day, and also a passion, right? If you're a traveler and you love holidays and you love going away and you love traveling, it's what everyone here talks about and it's what everyone wants to talk about. And it's super fun, and it's fun, talking to your friends and neighbors, telling them where you work, and it's a brand, one, that they know and that they think is great and it has a fantastic reputation, but also wanting to understand, how does it work? So how do you get the best deals? And, you get asked these questions a lot, and I'm always super excited to talk to people about it.
And talk to us about culture. So you've got a really interesting model as far as the employee talent model goes there. So in the office, what's it like, and what are some of the incentives for working at Luxury Escapes?
So, yeah, look, we are, if anyone's seen our CEO and founder on social media, they will know that he's very vocal about coming into the office full time. So if you work here, that's what you do. And we actually love it. It's a very family orientated office culture. They serve lunch here every day. Everyone kind of sits together and has lunch in the kitchen together. Going out for coffees and socializing is a big aspect of what we do. I think it's a very fun, for lack of a better word, it's a very fun environment to work in. And look, it's tough. I'm not going to say that your cup isn't a little bit empty at the end of the week, being on site for 5 days a week, and obviously making sure that you are on point, and you have to make sure from an introvert's perspective to get that extrovert factor out there. It's a lot, and it doesn't work for everyone, but it's a lot of fun, and everyone here is here for the right reasons, and it's a hugely passionate group of people to work with.
And talking of the founder, so what are some of the unique opportunities and challenges in working alongside a founder as a CFO?
Obviously it comes with an element of emotion to it. This is their baby, and they want to see it grow and do the best they can. But it's also great working with someone who knows the business inside and out. Like, you're with someone who's been there from day dot, knows the history, They do things like new starter lunches where Adam, our CEO, will tell the full story of how this came to be. And it's really interesting and everyone loves it. And you get together in a room and discuss the full ins and outs of the growth of the brand and how we got to where we are. And we want to make sure that the story is shared amongst everyone. It's not just top down. It's for everyone to tell. And and you learn a lot. You really learn a lot. I've never worked with a founder before, and they really know the ins and outs of every single element of the company because it's their heart, it's their soul, it's everything they've put their life into. It's every single part of every second that they live, and it's fun to share in that journey with them, especially when they're so passionate about it.
Beautiful. And how do you balance that entrepreneurial spirit, if you will, the emotion, with financial discipline?
It's a balance for sure. It's something that I'm probably still learning because I've been here 6 months now, so it's still relatively new compared to a lot of the people here. But I think presenting the information in the right way is super important. You've got to come at it knowing probably the way they're going to look at what you're presenting from a risk perspective, and you might have different risk appetites depending on who you're talking to, and just making sure that you understand what their point of view is. And I wouldn't like to use the word pitching, but kind of pitching it in a way that you know that your point is going to come across based on what their intentions are, I think is super important.
Mm. Well, in a role that's as demanding as CFO, tell us how you recharge, fill up your cup at the end of a week.
It's a good question. I have a busy life at home too. I have 2 little kids, so that makes life fun. For me, my mornings are my priority. That's where I recharge. I get up very early and that's my time to myself. I'm useless at nighttime, so don't talk to me at nighttime. But that's where I refill. And then on the weekend, I'm on. Like you don't get a break when you got 2 little kids. So my week finishes, lots of family time, lots of spending time with the kids and with my husband, lots of activities. So it's a balance. I think, does my cup necessarily get full when I rest on the weekend? Probably not, but it gets full in other ways because I'm always on.
Always on. And we're talking school age? What stage of life are the kids at?
One just started. So I've got a 6-year-old who just started prep and a 3-year-old.
You have just about the most busy life of anyone I've ever met, Matt.
It's busy but fun.
Awesome. And do you block out time, for holidays, times to, connect as a family? What do you like to do to kind of keep your life in check and balanced?
Yeah, definitely holidays. I'm a big advocate for holidays and taking leave. I try and encourage that from everyone I work with. Family holidays, even the weekend getaway, we'd love to go away as a family as well. It's a little bit difficult when my husband works weekends, so we have to balance that a little bit. But look, any kind of activity, music festivals together on a weekend or any kind of trip away, we try and make time for the 4 of us to really spend time together.
Awesome. It's a high-profile role, Nat, but we need to talk about the man behind the woman. Who's your support network at home? What do they do? What's his role?
He would love to be talked about like that. So my husband is a sports producer, which is a dream job for him. I've got zero interest in sport, so it's lucky because he's got zero interest in finance as well. But he's amazing and he's incredibly supportive, and I could not do it without him. Or lots of family. I live close to both grandparents on either side, and we're very, very lucky. We have an amazing support network. But it's a balance. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's tough. You got to prioritize. You got to pick. I'll be honest, I don't, school drop-offs and pickups are very hard for me to do. So that's why the evenings and the weekends are super, super important for me to spend time with the girls. But the mum guilt creeps in. It always does. And you've just got to keep trying to find that balance and keep trying to prioritize what works for you and find the balance that works for your family. But it's not easy. And to have people around you that support you is really key.
Crucial. Okay. So reflecting on your career so far, is there any, we talked about, great mentors that you've had in the past, but is there any sort of pivotal moments, any sliding doors moments that you can reflect back on and think, oh, wow, that was really important to getting me here today?
You know what? It was probably that first time I got it at census, that first time. I remember it so distinctly. I got pulled into a room, and my boss at the time was off that day. I think she was sick or something. And they were going through this massive transaction with the shareholders, and they didn't really know who to deal with. So they just said, "Hey, Nat, can you come into this room and help us do this?" And it was quite technical stuff. And I said, "Yep, give me the documentations from the lawyers, the step plan and everything. Let me work through it." And I think that was my first real exposure to the leadership group at the time and to our shareholders, where they started to see that I could probably step up and take on more technical items in the finance team. And I remember it so distinctly because it was scary and I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to do a lot of research, and I had to kind of take a step back and go, okay, what is the end state? What does this really look like? And present it in a way that made sense to non-finance people, which is always difficult. But I think if I hadn't, if my manager just happened to be there that day and they didn't pull me into that room, how the sliding doors would have changed.
Great story, yeah. If you were to give one piece of advice to aspiring CFOs, particularly those at the earlier stages of their career, what would it be?
I think going back to what I said earlier, it's hard, but you've really got to try and say yes to a lot of opportunities, and it feels like a challenge, and you might think you can't do it, and it's scary, but that would be my one piece of advice. Say yes, challenge yourself, keep learning. You've got to keep growing at any level. You've got to continue to grow and learn and upskill and, find mentors and find people in your world that are going to challenge you and keep pushing. That would be my advice.
Okay, and what's next for you and at Luxury Escapes? Are there any specific goals or projects you're excited about?
Yeah, we're actually about to kick off a brand new ERP implementation, which is super exciting because this company hasn't really seen one to its full extent before. And I think we're going through such a growth phase at the moment that it's super needed. And, I keep kind of telling people here, you're not going to know yourselves once you've got a really good ERP in place. And I think just continuing to build out the finance team, sometimes in companies like this where growth is quite short, and it happens in a short period of time, I should say. Finance sometimes gets a little bit lost in the dust. So it's time to bring that up to speed and keep upskilling the team and keep fixing our processes.
Fantastic. Well, Natalie Morwood, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Liam.